Hey YouTube, how's it going? Nerdy Narwhal here, and I'm back again with another action figure review. Today, taking a look at something a little bit different for the channel. This is Neca's Retro Cloth Creepshow action figure. This is an action figure of the Creeper, the omniscient narrator from the Creepshow series. Now, most of you know that I do stick to 6-scale collecting primarily. However, as a huge buff of the horror genre, I know that there are characters that will probably never see the light of day from a licensed 1/6 scale company. Thankfully, Neca does dive into a lot of those more niche or secondary characters in their retro cloth line. These figures are all scaled to a classic Mego 8-inch sort of scale, and I do buy them up on occasion, especially when I think there's a character who we won't be seeing in 6 scale for a while, at least not from a licensed company. I do know that Legio 7, I believe, made an awesome 6 scale version of the Creeper, but it's going to run a little more around the $700 price range, as opposed to this, which costed $20. I've bought in horror customs before, but for a character like this, I figured, nah, I'll stick with the retro cloth, at least until I find one of the creepers out there in the wild, and maybe do a deal collector to collector. Anyways, rambling over, let's take a look at this figure. We'll do a real quick top to bottom for you. While he's still on the rotating display base. Just let him all go around. Get those features in there. What I will say before we dive in to articulation and accessories, he is on Neca's new sort of bucks that they're using and tooling for this line, which greatly helps with posability and articulation. So you can get this guy into a lot of really good poses, which he's not really a character who's going to be in a lot of exaggerated sort of poses, nothing too athletic, but it is nice to know that you can do that if you wanted to. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off the rotating display base, and we will dive in to the accessories. First of all, right out of the box, he comes with 2 open hands, like this one here. I popped that open hand off and gave him his gripping hand, which is included, and that's really it for interchangeable hand sculpts, which is nice anyways, because like I said, this is a $20-$30 figure. NECA didn't have to give us interchangeable hands, so I'll take what I can get, even if it's not a full spread like I usually see in 1/6 scale. Now, he also comes, one of my favorite accessories is this little Creepshow comic book. In the show, he's always narrating the stories, and these stories come from the pages of this comic book that he's carrying around. We can open this up and see that there is actually a fully done couple of pages in there, which is absolutely awesome to see. There's not multiple pages, but when it's folded together like that, you can't really tell too much in this scale. So this is a great little accessory. I love to have it. He also comes with this little skull here. Missing its jaw, it does look like there's a socket underneath for you to be able to plug this skull onto a head sculpt. That's fine. I'm probably not ever going to do that. If I wanted to give him a skull head, I'd get some blue tack and probably use a Mythic Legion's skull, something that had its jaw with articulation. But this accessory looks really cool. As you can see, I just sort of had it resting in that open hand there. It's weathered, decent enough paint apps, and decent enough sculpting. So there's that. And then finally, you get this little lantern, which you can see is being held in his gripping hand. I thought for a second that this guy might light up But I was wrong. It's just a clear, translucent plastic. Although if you were going to take some cool shots of this guy, get your lighting right, I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard to make it look like this thing was emitting light in Photoshop or After Effects. So that's just my 2 cents. It's a cool looking little lantern. Totally works. Now, let's dive in to articulation. It's nothing too crazy, not a lot of use of ball joints. But there is now more use of hinge and swivel joints than there used to be, which, particularly in the ankles, frees up a lot of space for us to do better and more secure poses. So here's what I'm talking about. There's the ankle pivot. It's on a hinge there, and then up and down. So hinge and swivel. You're going to get the same type of action at the knees here, where let's get that dress out of the way, hinge back and forth and swivel. The hips themselves are on a ball joint, which allow us to take the figure out, get them forward to about 90 degrees there, so you can get your creeper sitting down just fine if you really wanted to. There. So I like the use of ball joints. It's definitely better than a T-cut or something like that. Now going up into the torso here, there's not the standard retro cloth swivel at the waist like a lot of their figures have, but they have upgraded to what feels like a ball joint in the diaphragm. Not a lot of back because of the sculpting, but there is some good forward for an ab crunch, and he can rotate at it, which is very nice to see. The wrists are also on that hinge and swivel. Get a little bit of rotation there. And the elbows, this very same hinge and swivel. And then the arms are also on a nice hinge and swivel. So you can get them out. You could rotate them fully around if his outfit wouldn't get in the way. And everything is working good as it should. Let's pull that hood down. You can see that the head is on a ball joint, which is great. You can get a little bit of tilt side to side if you want to give him some attitude. You're not going to get a lot of upwards look out of him, but you will get plenty of downwards look at him. And I'm not sure if you count this as a piece of articulation or not, but there is a decent wire going throughout that entire hood to allow you to pose that hood up on the figure however best you like it. Get it to look realistic, sitting or blowing in the wind, which I always struggle with. It usually takes me quite a bit of time, but there, that looks all right. And what I like is there's a wire going in the back here too, which even some 6-scale companies who do longer hoods like this don't even give us. That back wire is absolutely essential to get that hood looking good, laying flat down the back. So I do like that. Now, this line used to exclusively just give us hinges in the ankles, which really limited the amount of dramatic poses that we could get with these figures. I'm so happy that they've switched that up now. Even though this isn't a crazy character, but it really frees it up for getting, a good walking stance. I can have both feet lying flat on the ground, left foot forward, right foot back, right arm forward to counterbalance the weight there. That works. And because it's a horror figure now, you can break some of those rules. Get him sort of walking with the same foot and the same arm. There we go. off balance a little bit because horror characters don't follow the same rules as everyone else. When you're posing or taking pictures, they need to have something off about them, something a little off-settling. And now I can balance this figure out the right way to do that securely without having to worry about too much falling over in the display that I put him in. Now let's get into the paint apps and sculpting on this figure. Starting from the very bottom here, the feet, the sculpting and painting, it goes throughout almost the entirety of the body. I'm only not sure about this midsection here because I haven't lifted his robe up that far to show, but it's on the hands, it's on the legs and the arms and the upper torso, and finally it is on the head. And what a head that is. The eyes are fine. They are small and crisp and clean. The paint apps, Neca really delivered with this guy. They did have some leeway, I do suppose, as this is a horror figure. It's rotted flesh. They didn't need to get a nice looking skin tone. And really they could clean everything up with the black wash to bring out some of that detail, but they delivered. This looks great. It's realistic enough to probably look better than all the other retro cloth figures that I have in my collection. And this little, this little doll hair that they put on there, which usually isn't something that I would like at this scale. It would look bad because it'd fray out and get all fluffy and look crappy, honestly. It works well for this character because that is how the creeper's hair looks. It's all frayed out and mangy and scrappy, and that's totally okay for this guy. So I like everything that Neca's done. This is a great figure, and they've really delivered for $30. The paint applications are extended through the outfit, which has a lot of really well done weathering on it. Plenty of loose tassels, and the fraying at the bottom and the wrist looks very natural. For the most part, it does not look too machine cut, which it absolutely was. But they did a good job leaving all these loose ends, making it look uneven and shredded up so that it doesn't look machine cut. The fraying, it doesn't look intentional, which is a huge part of doing fraying like that successfully. In the past, I've taken a small amount of sandpaper to clothing that I wanted to look a little more tattered, and I've sanded it like this to get that sort of a look. I'm not going to have to do anything like that on this guy because I think that's totally appropriate to the eye. It's very well done. So let's get a couple of quick poses here. You saw my first pose, which is how I'm going to mostly keep him on the display here. Holding the lantern in one hand and the skull in the other. Let's get that there again so that we can get another look at it. Such a good pose. It shows off most of his accessories. And then at the feet, I just take that awesome little comic book and stick it right there. There we go. Now, key to posing with an accessory like this lantern is to remember that this lantern, if this were a 1/1 scale figure or a real-life creeper, would have a bit of weight to it. So don't have that wrist going straight out, right? Have it bended a little bit, like it is responding to the weight of the lantern as he holds it straight out in front of himself to catch a look at something. The head's down a little bit because that looks absolutely menacing. There we go. Tilt the head back and you get a bit more of a confident sort of look, which this character would have because he is the omniscient god, more or less, of this Creepshow universe. Skull just resting nicely in his hand, and boom. That's how I'm going to have this guy in my own display. Alternatively, keep this hand on if you want to have him with the comic book. Let's get him sitting down looking at the comic book real quick. It's not ideal. He doesn't really have any hands that would be ideal for posing him with that comic book. But let's see what we can do live on camera. There we go. Get those feet flat onto the ground. Because with a tight gripping hand like that, if you can get the comic to rest at its spine, sort of where the tension is, there, something like this, maybe. Okay, almost like that. Tilt the hand a little bit more. Look at that. Now it almost looks like he's reading to children at a library, turning it around to show them the pictures, right? So if I had the Neca 8-inch Ralph from A Christmas Story or something like that, this would be absolutely awesome. I'd have him sitting down in front of him and being relayed a terrifying or creepy tale from the Creeper. So there's a lot you can do with this figure. Neca really showed up for this one. If you can still find it out there for around the $20 to $40 that it's going to go for, right around the middle there, 30, 35. I'm not entirely sure. It was sitting in my cart on Big Bad Toy Store, or sitting in my pile of loot for ages. Don't remember how much I spent on it. But if you can find it in the wild, it's definitely a worthy pickup. It looks great. It looks awesome with other horror figures. And this is the Creeper. Iconic, really. So, get one more quick look at it. Here we go. And that is going to do it for this figure review. If I missed anything, please get at me in the comments. Otherwise, stay happy, stay healthy, and keep on collecting. Nerdy Narwhal, out.